Hey guys, welcome to this video, which is a video inspired by all the memes going around these days. Many people, obviously, hold a conspiracy that, rather than just being a nuke testing facility for the US Air Force, Area 51 in the American state of Nevada holds extraterrestrials that the government doesn't want the citizens to know about. This video is not a commentary about whether or not I believe in that, but I don't, just saying. I do, however, strongly believe that there's life outside of Earth, and as it's an even more intriguing topic, this video will talk about some of the complications that could or will arise from trying to communicate with intelligent beings from another planet. So here we go. The first thing that would be an issue right with the encounter would be having no translation dictionaries. Whenever we, in our current lives, have learned a language, other people had already put together a language-to-language dictionary that we could use to match words between the languages. If running into a language for the first time ever, though, no such thing would exist. Therefore, we would have no way of understanding them, or vice versa. One story about this that may or may not be true is about the naming of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. One possible etymology is that when the Spanish arrived on the peninsula for the first time, they asked the natives who spoke, and still speak Maya, what their land was called, and the natives said what sounded like Yucatan, so the Spanish assumed that was the name for the place. However, the story goes, the natives actually had no idea what the Spanish were asking, and Yucatan was actually Maya for, I don't understand you. There are a few reasons why this etymology is disputed. No one really agrees on how that peninsula got its name, but the story illustrates the point about trying to figure out what the extraterrestrials are saying, especially if you're like me and you're absolute trash at reading hand gestures or interpreting images. As a basic hypothetical, say you meet the aliens at a beach, point to the ocean, and ask them what they call that. However, they misread where you were indicating, and they give you their word for horizon, sky, cloud, or even boat, depending on what's out there. That being said, you could end up writing every word down as, I have no idea what's going on here, instead if the aliens can't decipher exactly what you're trying to do. Going back to that word for boat, you'd be lucky if the extraterrestrials even have boats on their home planet. This brings us to the second complication of learning an extraterrestrial language, the large amount of untranslatable vocabulary. So yes, there's a lot of stuff that exists on both Earth and on the other planet. Big, small, sky, star, life, population, to go, are some of the things off the top of my head. However, a lot of their stuff involving life forms could be completely new to humans. To start, there are obviously no species in common between the planets. Even if they, for example, had an animal that looked and acted a lot like a cat, none of us would be the least bit comfortable calling it a cat, as it evolved completely independently of earthling cats. For the substances on the planet, we may have scientific names for the stuff, as the universe is completely made out of only 94 elements that compound, and we base the rare substances' names off of that. But if it's found very commonly on the other planet, its residents will no doubt have a common name for the substance. In addition, the ETs might not even be similar to us in the slightest. Humans do certain things like eat, breathe, and sleep that we all have in common, and have certain parts like a nose, a mouth, and a neck. Therefore, all human languages have words for them. There's no guarantee that an extraterrestrial species would do or have any of those things. Many movies with ETs portray the aliens as being functionally similar to Earthling humans, just because it's easier to imagine, and also because they use human actors. The aliens might fly, which we have a word for, but don't do ourselves. They might have wheels instead of feet. They might not eat, they might just absorb nutrients through their skin, so there goes a word for mouth. They might have no need to inhale one gas and exhale another, so they'd have no word for breathe, although I personally find this unlikely because something needs to react to create ATP or their equivalent of it. They may have one biological light detector around our visible light range and another one way off in X-ray range, so they'd have one word for each of these eyes, not to mention a whole different list of colors. I don't know if any of this is possible or real anywhere in the universe, and I'll totally let any astrobiologist dispute me in the comments as to if anything I said is completely impossible, but do keep open minds, we haven't met any yet, or so is said. The main point is that the aliens have lived very different lives from us here on Earth, and therefore they will have a completely different set of vocabulary. New words aren't the only complication with learning an ET language. Due to the aforementioned different lives they live, the aliens would have different concepts. Among humans, there are two sexes, and therefore many of our languages base their gender systems off of that, even though not all do. The gender systems I know of existing on Earth are masculine feminine neuter, common neuter, animate inanimate, and no gender distinction, and others that I don't know about. However, who's to say an ET species also works like that? They could require 3 or 4 sexes to reproduce. In that situation, their languages may have that many genders, plus another one if they're using a neuter gender as well. Outside of gender, languages view time differently, and alien time may be very out there for humans. In the 2016 movie Arrival, one way that aliens could see time differently is portrayed, which I'm giving no spoilers to because it would be a disservice to my favorite movie. However, time in language is a bit less due to environment, as time itself is somewhat uniform throughout the universe. With all that, anyone who tries to be student one of an extraterrestrial language can either fear or look forward to the new systems of that language. The final possible difficulty to point out is that we, as people, might not even realize that the aliens we encounter are using a language with each other. With the exception of deaf people who use sign languages, all of our languages on Earth are vocal. We talk in order to communicate information. Therefore, if we were to run into an alien species and look for signs of language, we would most likely try to determine if they're making sounds and responding or having a conversation that we can hear. However, their language could be in some other form. The main requirements for a form of communication to be a language are that the words are arbitrarily assigned meanings without much reason, there's a limited number of base units that words can be made out of. In spoken languages, this is the phoneme count of a language. You don't need to have heard a sentence before to understand it, this is why grammar exists, nor do you need any context from the environment, and most importantly for these purposes, it must be a learned, non-instinctive behavior. It also seems that having verbs is fairly important to classification as a language, but this is less noted generally. It doesn't matter whether this is done with vocal cords and a mouth or not. This goes back to the possibility that the ETs are physically different from humans. Especially if they have a wide visual range and skin like an octopus, one possible form of language is changing the color of their skin in a certain order to create words and sentences. To fit the categorical requirements, provided that the colors they flash are arbitrarily formed with no regards to properties of the words they represent, all words are formed from a limited pool of colors, the words are flashed in a particular order to create original sentences, and if the ETs learned how to do the flashing from their elders as little kids, then congratulations, you've found a legitimate language. I like thinking about this possibility. An alien race that had this visual language would likely have thousands of languages among its planetary population, just like human languages on Earth, organized into families. This would mean that on that planet, one citizen tries learning another language, but instead of struggling to make some phoneme like on Earth, they have trouble producing a red hue because it's not a unit in their native language. Meanwhile, the teacher gets the word for computer misunderstood as rock because their skin can't get to such a far gamma ray tone as is required before switching to near infrared for the rest of the word, as it confuses the class. I live for this stuff, and I also encourage the students in this hypothetical to not give up. Are you worried about speaking this language because you can't manipulate your skin color like a screen pixel? Don't feel too left out. Those ETs would have major issues with your weird vocal language in return, lacking vocal cords and all that. But keep in mind there are infinite possibilities for what an extraterrestrial language could be like, or what sense it uses. But when we encounter one, I really hope it's peaceful. Thanks for watching.